Data fam, welcome to the first ever hybrid retail tug. Blake and Matt are in the Salesforce office of Austin, and they're going to have a fantastic presentation soon after we get the introductions out of the door and Suvojit gets to present his piece. So hang on tight, feel free with your questions on the Q&A channel, and enjoy the show. Over to you, Blake.
Perfect. Yeah, if you want to flip to the next slide, here we are. Yeah, quick look at today's agenda. A little welcome from all of us and some quick introductions, a few brief announcements, then we'll actually be into our content for today. So first and foremost, we have our guest speaker, Suvojit, here with us. He'll actually be going through some sales analysis from the lens of category management. So that should be an interesting session for sure. And then next up, we've got a bit of a rebroadcast from Tableau conference this year. Two of the co-leads of this tug, Matt Huff and myself, we actually presented at TC this year in San Diego. So that session was not recorded, unfortunately, but the good news is you get the rebroadcast today, and this one will be recorded. So looking forward to that. So Ojo, if you want to flip to the next slide here. A quick little introduction to the three co-leaders that we have for this tug. Myself, I'm Blake Feiza. I am working for HEB as a decision scientist, and I'm based out of Austin, Texas, the location of this hybrid event today. Matt, if you want to introduce.
Yep. So Matt Huff, I'm also a decision scientist for HEB, and instead of Austin, I'm in San Antonio, which, for those keeping track at home, is not that far away. So I came up this morning for this. And Ojo?
Hi, I'm Ojo. I've been doing data to visuals as my side hustle, as my passion project. It's been an honor to be co-leading the retail and consumer goods tug with these fine gentlemen, Blake and Matt. And it's an honor to have you and your enjoying today's session. Look forward to an interesting presentation from Suvojit as well as Blake and Matt.
Perfect. Then yeah, Ojo, if you want to flip to the next slide here. Quick update for everyone for the session in September. So our upcoming tug after this one will actually be a collab with VizTS. If you haven't heard of VizTS, it is Viz Sukarima Show, which is actually a game show. So definitely don't want to miss this session. It's going to be a ton of fun. It's all live and building in Tableau on the fly with all of you. So they have been running this game show for a while now. It's, some visionaries and ambassadors based in Japan. And basically how that'll work next session is we'll share an image of a viz, we'll provide the data set, and then everyone participating in the tug will be challenged to reproduce that viz live during the session. So we'll have Tableau swag for prizes, lots of fun learning and group engagement there. So definitely don't want to miss this one. We will share that QR code with you at the end of this session here today.
And other thing I would add to that is it will actually be at a different time than the normal. So it won't actually be during the work week. So you'll actually be able to set aside and focus on that. So should be fun.
Perfect. And Ojo, if you want to go to the next slide. Here we go. That concludes the announcements we had to kick off today's session. Suvojit, I'd actually like to hand the mic off to you to dive into the category management sales analysis.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Blake. Can someone enable my share screen? Yes, now the share screen. Thank you. And you guys can see my screen?
We see a blue screen, yes.
Okay, perfect. You hear me clearly, I guess?
Yes, we do see CPG sales analysis.
Perfect. Give me 1 second. All right. word interesting thrown in here 3 times by Ojo and Blake. So I guess you guys have put me on the spot a little bit here. I hope I can make this a little bit interesting, if not. So anyway, first off, Ojo, Matt, and Blake, thanks for the opportunity. And to everyone else who has joined, one disclaimer. This retail tug, in my opinion, or by my understanding, has 2 pillars to it. One is obviously the Tableau aspect of things. The other is the retail. Now, the disclaimer is my talk and my presentation is going to be focused on the retail aspect of things, not so much the Tableau aspect of things. So little to no Tableau talk here, sadly. In the end, if I have time, and I've been given a very strict timeline of 30 minutes, I guess, if there is time, I'd like to share an example dashboard that I've created for this talk. Okay, so starting off, CPG industry sales analysis in the context of category management. Pretty hefty title. The reason I put it this way is because category management is sort of the ecosystem within which I want to share my knowledge and a little bit of my understanding of how sales analysis is done in the CPG industry. Very quick 2 seconds about myself. So I've been working in the CPG industry for 25 years now across 3 different countries. I worked in various roles covering sales, trade marketing, category management, and other consulting data analysis kind of roles. Currently, I work with an organization called Springboard Data Management, who are they're a CPG-centric data analytics firm. And I've been a data fan for around 10 years. I've put in my LinkedIn and Tableau public profile here if anyone's interested. Happy to connect on LinkedIn. This is the agenda today. I want to cover what category management means and how it's used, move on to different data sources and the key challenges that the industry faces. Then I'm going to move on to sales fundamentals, key metrics and the KPIs, and as I said, an example dashboard time permitting. Most of my presentation will be focused on the number 3 and the number 4 of the agenda here. Category management. As you can see in the image above up top, everyone knows a manufacturer manufactures goods. The goods move to the retailer sells the goods to the shopper, and the goods are consumed. That's the flow of goods that happen in the CPG/retail industry. In this industry, since the 1980s, pioneered by companies like Procter & Gamble and Walmart, this concept of category management came into being. What is category management? It's kind of a science and a sort of a philosophy or a way of analyzing the business and practicing business monitoring, so to speak, by retailers and their vendors or the manufacturers. Category Management Association defines category management as a retailer/supplier process of managing categories as strategic business units, producing enhanced business results by focusing on delivering consumer value. A lot of words, but what are the key elements? 3 key elements. A, it is a retailer-supplier collaboration. B, each category is seen and monitored and planned as a strategic business unit or a profit center. And third and most important, everything that happens in category management is consumer-centric. Okay. This company called the Partnering Group, sometime in the 1980s, came up with an 8-step process of how category management to be practiced. It's a theoretical framework which sort of defines the entire process. Step 1 is defining the category. What is that? It basically literally means what products encompass or what products together make up my category. I'll give you an example. Sometime in my past life, when I was a category advisor, I was working with a company called Loblaws, which is the biggest retailer in Canada, on a category called hot beverage aisle. Now, the question is, what does hot beverage aisle entail? It entails coffee, tea, other hot beverages. the milk additives, and so on and so forth. So the first step of category management is to define what the category contains. The next is category role. What role does the category perform? Is it a destination category, as in is it a category where shoppers are drawn, because of which the shoppers are drawn to the store? Is it a routine category? Is it an occasional category, like a seasonal category? Or is it a convenience category where shoppers walk into the store not with the objective of shopping that category, but they walk into the store to shop the destination category, and then while passing through the aisles, they pick up some stuff from the convenience category. So what's the category role? Number 3 is category assessment. Once the category has been defined and the role has been chalked out, then they go deeper into the different subcategories and segments within the category and try to do the analysis of different brand segments, etc. Now, the grid on the right-hand side is an example. It's a grid of volume versus profit. When the volume is high and the profit is high, everything's good, everything's hunky-dory. So the category assessment there is to maintain the category. When the volume is low and the profit is low as well, that's a bit of a problem. So that's where one needs to focus and try to increase the profit or increase the volume or both. The fourth step here is where a quantitative and a qualitative scorecard is created. So based on the category role and based on the outcome of the category assessment, a retailer usually creates a scorecard which says, these are my quantitative targets, these are my qualitative targets. And based on that, they create category strategies. What is the strategy that this specific category will be following as far as that specific retailer is concerned? Is it a traffic building category? As in, this is a category where they want, their primary goal is to build footfall and build traffic. Or is it a profit generating category, for example, where they don't care about the footfall, but in the grid there, they want the profit to be high. Okay. So once the category strategy is also done, then obviously comes the tactics. This is where I'll be spending most of my time, the rest of the presentation. The category tactics essentially deal with the sales fundamentals. This is the sales fundamentals that I'm talking about within the context of category management. Of course, there is a plan presentation where everything is brought together, where a document is created, formal document which talks about the goals of the category, the strategy, category strategies, and so on and so forth. And a continuous review of the category is the last step. So it's a cyclical process. Based on what I have seen in my career, it is step 6, 7, and 8, which is kind of done on a consistent, continuous basis, and as a partnership between retailers and CPG manufacturers. Typically, for a retailer, when a category role is set, a category strategy is set, that doesn't change too often. Okay. I cannot see any questions, by the way. So if there's any questions, maybe we wait till the end, or someone stop me and ask a question. Moving on to data sources. Typically in the retail and CPG industry, we have internal data, market data, consumer data, inventory data, and some other types of data that is used typically for analysis. When I say internal data, what do I mean? I'm talking about point of sale data. So when I go shopping and I check out at the counter, every time I'm scanning a product, a transaction has been created, and that goes into a database. That's my point of sale data. That's a very key data element that is used by retailers, by vendors to do all sorts of different analysis. Of course, there is shipment data from vendors to the distributor centers or the stores in cases where products are sent direct to stores. And there are data on promotions. When I talk about market data, I'm talking about syndicated data and e-commerce data, for example. Syndicated data is market data, as in this is data that is created by companies like AC Nielsen here in Canada. I believe in the US, there's IRI as well. These are the two big companies. They buy POS data from retailers, they do data collection from the market, and then they have a huge team of statisticians who build crazy different kinds of statistical models, and based on algorithms and stuff, they create databases of different categories, and this is what they sell to vendors, and this is what is used to do all sorts of different analysis and category management. The difference between POS sales data and the syndicated data is when a retailer and a vendor advisor is someone who works for the CPG, for the manufacturer, who is the designated advisor in terms of category management to the retailer. So when they work with point of sale data, it is in a way two-dimensional because it has data for that specific retailer only. Whereas the syndicated data gives a much bigger picture as to what's happening in the overall marketplace, which is very important to know. Consumer data. I'm going too fast, but I'm doing that because I have a time limit. What I'm going to do is at the end of my presentation, I'm going to share a short document which kind of covers most of what I'm talking about, because I know there's a lot of theory here. And that's a document which you can refer to later. Panel data. Panel data is where companies, as I mentioned, like AC Nielsen and IRI, they recruit shoppers to create a panel and they record their shopping habits in a database. That's panel data. Shopper data is data that comes out of the transactions that happen at the retail store, and that is more about shopping habits. The kind of data that we get from shopper data would be, an example would be basket size. Like when Suvojit went shopping, what was his average basket size at such and such retailer? What categories did he purchase? When he purchased coffee, did he purchase whitener? And so on and so forth. That's the kind of data we get out of shopper data, also panel data. Inventory data obviously is data about inventory, store inventory, and also inventory in the warehouse of the distribution centers. Sometimes macroeconomic data, demographic data, these kind of things are used also to do analysis and take decisions. So this is about data sources. What are the key challenges faced by the industry? The 3 or 4 key challenges. The first one is data fragmentation. As you can see, there are different kinds of data coming from different sources, living in silos in different parts of the organization. Putting it all together and then doing analysis on that is obviously a challenge. Forecast accuracy is a big deal for the retailer as well as the vendor or the manufacturer, because that drives everything else that goes into their planning and the back-end production and so on and so forth. ROI measurement. I run a promotion. How did the promotion do? I predicted that the promotion will do so much, this much, will generate so much volume, and it generated so much. What's the gap? This kind of ROI measurement is always challenging and a huge deal for retailers and vendors. Lastly, channel complexity. There are different channels in the marketplace. For example, grocery banner. I live and work in Canada. Loblaw is a great example. Sobeys and Metro is a great example of a grocery banner. Tesco in the UK is a grocery banner. I believe, Blake, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, Kroger is a grocery banner in the US. Then you have mass merchandisers. Walmart is a mass merchandiser. Then you have the drug channel, where in Canada it is Shoppers Drug Mart. Different channels operating in different ways creates complexity. And something that aggravates the complexity more is the fact of channel blurring. Over the past decade and more, we have seen a lot of channel blurring. What that means is a grocery banner selling pharmaceutical products, or a drug channel, a drug store selling groceries. That happens these days. So this is the effect of channel blurring. So these are the key challenges: data fragmentation, forecast accuracy, measuring return on investment, and the complexity of different channels and channel blurring. I move now to the second section of my presentation. This is where I go to talk about CPG sales fundamentals. But before that, Anybody who has not heard of the 4 P's of marketing, put it in the chat, Q&A, something that would help me. Anyone? Any comments? Okay. I'm assuming some of you have for sure heard. This is a theory or a philosophy that was introduced or proposed by the guy on the left-hand side of the screen, E. Jerome McCarthy, in 1960 in his book, Basic Marketing, a Managerial Approach. This is what we call typically the marketing mix. So there are 4 aspects to marketing anything. It's the product itself, product or service. It's the place, the promotion, and the price. Now, this 4 P's is about marketing anything. When I translate this to typically the CPG industry, this is how it looks like. It's like a pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid is distribution. This is where I'm talking about market coverage and having the product available across the various stores and channels in the marketplace. Then we talk about shelving, which deals with planogramming, and all of this I'm going to cover later in the subsequent slides. Planogramming is the way in which we put the products on the shelf. Pricing, of course, comes later as to what my pricing strategy would be, how am I going to price the products, what the optimal pricing would be for a product, so on and so forth. And finally, promotion. And promotion deals with different kinds of promotional conditions that I'm going to talk about. The reason this is a pyramid is because, as you can imagine, there's no point promoting a product if the product is not distributed properly across all stores or across specific channels, right? Only when the product is distributed can I have a promotion, or the question of pricing comes in. Shelving is after distribution, because once the product is distributed, then I put it on the shelf and I put it in the optimal place on the shelf. And this is the logic by which we have sort of a pyramid built like this. Distribution. The key metrics and KPIs that count within analysis of distribution. The first very key metric is all commodity volume, or ACV. I'm going to read it out here. It is the measure of the total dollar volume of total retail sales for a particular outlet or channel type in a given market. Meaning, a store or a channel, what is the total sales from that store or from that channel? That's their all commodity volume. And that sort of drives this next metric of ACD, or all commodity distribution. This is the ACV of stores in which an item is available as a percentage of ACV of all stores in the channel in the given market. In other words, I have one store out of 10 stores, and that store has a 10% ACV. I have a product and I sell that in only that store. That means my ACV is 10%. Distribution points, again, is another key metric that is used. It is the combined measure of the breadth and depth of availability of a brand or segment or subcategory. This is calculated as the sum of ACDs of all SKUs within the product line. So if I have a brand which has 6 products, so the sum of the ACDs of all these 6 products is my distribution points. There's this concept of breadth and depth of availability, as I mentioned here. Breadth is how widely is the product distributed. So how widely, as in how many stores in the marketplace is my brand available. And depth of distribution is how deeply is the product supported or stuffed in each location. In other words, how many SKUs are there in the stores on an average. So I have a brand which is available in 80% of the marketplace. Great. But on an average, in any store, I have 6 SKUs available. That's the depth. All right. Now, when I mentioned the word SKU, just to be clear, SKU is a stock keeping unit. It's essentially a unique product. So any product you pick and scan, it has a barcode. That barcode depicts one specific SKU. So A Pantene shampoo, which is with a 400 ml bottle, is one SKU. Pantene shampoo 200 ml bottle is another SKU. That's how SKUs are defined. Fair share of distribution is a big metric that is always monitored. It compares the manufacturer's share of the category of items in distribution to their dollar share within the category. So the category has 100 SKUs, the manufacturer has 10. The manufacturer's share, dollar sales share of the total category is 30%. So using that metric, the manufacturer would try and convince the retailer to list more products on the shelves. Now, since I'm talking about distribution, I must mention that next time when you go to a grocery store, when you look through the aisles, try and look at it from a bigger, step back and try and look at the entire aisle as much as possible. You'll get a sense of, what the category definition looks like, how the category is defined, how the different segments look like, so on and so forth. Okay. Lastly is the sales per point of distribution. This is a means of estimating the sales of every point of distribution. That's why it's called the sales per point of distribution. In other words, this is a measure of sales velocity or rate of sales. So how much sales will I achieve per point of distribution? Okay. A quick exercise or a recap on the distribution. Imagine a market which has 5 stores, and each of these stores has a total retail sales value of $200, $100, $400, and so on and so forth here. And there is one SKU of laundry detergent which is available in store C, D, and E, as the picture depicts. Can anyone in the chat tell me what is the ACV of store C? Anyone? 400?
400?
Perfect. The total ACV of store C is 400. What is the market importance of store E? I know I have not used the word market importance, but I'm assuming it's kind of intuitive.
20%.
Whoever said this, perfect answer. That's essentially market importance is essentially the share of the banner of the store within the market, right? Numeric distribution, big KPI for as far as distribution is concerned. It is essentially the percentage of stores in which my product is available. In this case, 3 stores out of 5, which is 60%. Weighted distribution is like ACD, or it is ACD as a matter of fact. So anyone wants to take a shot at what is the ACD of this SKU which is distributed in 3 out of these 5 stores?
70%.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that, but it is essentially 70%. Why? Because the ACV of the stores where the product is distributed is 70%. Okay. I think I'm running out of time already, so I'm going to go a little fast. Shelving. This has to do with planograms. It is a detailed layout of that guides the optimal placement of products. It's a science in itself. There are specific softwares that's used, like JDA Space Planning. AC Nielsen has Spaceman, and now there's a whole multitude of different softwares that's used. The picture that you see on the bottom left of your screen is a typical planogram. Facings is the number of horizontal product units that's displayed. So in this picture of the planogram, if you notice on the top left-hand side, I think it's Red Bull. It has 2 horizontal units, so the number of facings is 2. So which product will be shelved where, how many facings that product will have, and all of that, it's a science in itself. So there are people, just the way we data fans have Tableau skills, people who do planograms, they have specific planogramming skills. Days of supply is a big metric when it comes to shelving. It is the number of days a product will remain on the shelf before it runs out. In other words, what's the shelf inventory as compared to the average daily unit sales. Another key metric, turns, is how many times the inventory of the product will turn over during a certain period of time. So it's the sales for the period divided by the average inventory during the period. Okay. Pricing, I'll try and go quick on this. Regular pricing is the price of a product when it is not promoted, in the absence of any kind of promotion. Promoted price is the opposite, is the price of a product when the product is sold under some kind of a promotion. Retail price is actually the mix of both. Retail price is the average price of a product which is sold under any promotional condition or without any promotion. Percentage sold on TPR is an example of a metric. TPR stands for temporary price reduction. So a vendor likes to know that what percentage of my product was sold in TPR, or what percentage of my product was sold without any promotion. Okay. Moving on to promotion, I mentioned promotional condition. These are different ways in which products are promoted. TPR, or temporary price reduction, is one. Feature is another. Feature is the flyers, when a certain product or a group of products are featured on a weekly flyer that the retailers come up with. And believe it or not, there are companies and organizations who crunch this data and who create this database, and they sell this data on features to vendors and retailers. In Canada, Numerator is a company that sells databases on features. Display is another promotional condition when you're having some kind of a feature or having some kind of a TPR and your products are put on special displays. Regular versus promoted sales is a big comparison that's done. I've already mentioned regular sales is sales that happens without any promotion, and promoted sales is when the sales that happens under any kind of promotional condition. There's something called baseline and incremental sales. These are calculated numbers, and the baseline sale is essentially a statistical estimate of the expected sales of the product in absence of any kind of promotion. So if nothing is done to move the product, what would be the baseline of the product be? Incremental sales is anything above the baseline. So that's assumed to be the sales happening as a result of some kind of an impetus. The lift on promotion, that's a measure of the impact of the effectiveness of a promotion that's done. It's calculated as the total volume that happens as a result of promotion as a percentage or as an index of the baseline volume. Okay. As an example, here we have 12 weeks where each week there's some sales units of a specific product. Weeks 1, 2, 3, and 7, 8, 9 are regular weeks. Weeks 4, 5, 6, and 10, 11, 12 are weeks where there was some kind of a promotion. So in regular versus promoted sales, every week is either a regular week or a promoted week for the product or a group of products. And by the way, when I say group of products, I should have mentioned earlier, this is when a group of products is featured together or promoted together, like all Pantene 400 ml shampoo bottles. That's what we know as a promoted group. They are usually line priced. I'm using the industry nomenclature. Line price meaning the price is similar or same. As opposed to regular versus promoted sales, baseline versus incremental sales looks something like this. The dark blue is the estimated sales volume that should happen for a product, that is expected to happen for a product in the absence of any promotion. And the light blue, which is the rest of the sales, is driven by some sort of an impetus or promotion, and that's your incremental sales. And as an example, for week 4, the unit lift would be 225 because it's a total sales of $90 that divided by 90 units divided by 40 units, and that's always typically shown as an index. I will take 2 minutes to share an example dashboard with you. So with all this theory, eventually, this is an example of a typical CPG dashboard a manufacturer would use. This is a sales executive summary. On top, you have the different periods and latest 4 weeks, latest 12 weeks, latest 52 weeks, YTDs year to date. These are typical time periods that's used to analyze the CPG business. And in terms of measure, essentially you have dollars, you have units, and then you have tonnage. Tonnage means different things to different vendors. For some, it is kgs. For some, it is liters. And for some manufacturers like P&G or Unilever, who operate in a multitude of categories, they sometimes create their own statistical unit as tonnage to sort of create a leveling field across all their products. So this is a dashboard which shows the share of 3 different retailers in the marketplace. You have some bands which talks about year-to-date dollars, units, and of course, when you change year-to-date to 52 weeks, this changes the measure and the time periods, and it shows the trend, overall trend for the last 52 weeks or so. Down below, you have retailers, regions, and brands with your week-on-week trend, a comparison versus a year ago. And you have the key metrics, and of course, there is dashboard actions where you can, if you want to understand more about the North region, the dashboard action focuses on the North region, and the rest of the dashboard is now showing North region. What is more interesting is the promotional analysis dashboard. This is a typical case where you have a bunch of products. Let's say, for example, you have 4 products, which is a PPG or a promoted group. You have a bunch of filters here. You create a price threshold, in this case 249, which is the line on the graph here. Any week where the product price is above 249 is a regular week. The others are promoted weeks. And you can click and drag the weeks that you want to compare. And the visual shows you the share of your promoted share and regular share and how it compares versus a year ago, and so on and so forth. With that, I think I am going to stop because I may have overshot my time by about 3-4 minutes. Apologize for that. Any questions?
Yes, by all means, ask questions. Suvojit is a very well-rounded expert of CPG and retail. For the longest time I've known him, he's been in this space. And thank you. It was such a fantastic presentation. Our first, I would argue, that has been so retail intense. 101. I've used a few of these metrics, not in the retail space per se, but in digital marketing. So these are commonly ARR, ACVs, and these are terms that can be used, recycled, and reused several times in this space. So thank you so very much. It was a very intense, and I know there was a bit of time pressure, but you did fantastic. Let me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I'll send across a short document, which I hope you can share with everybody who's participating in today's meeting, if they want to look through it and keep as a reference.
Absolutely.
Questions. I will share them as we go. Are you able to see my screen?
It's a black screen, also.
Share screen, and then let me know.
Honestly, Ojo, we could probably just take it from here.
Absolutely. All right. So handing over to Blake and Matt for their amazing presentation on the rerun of their TC25 presentation.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Ojo, for that introduction. And thank you, Suvojit, for the session prior to us. That was very informative for me. I learned a lot of stuff, which Matt will always appreciate. But onto the next content that we have for today. This is from Idea to Insight, the HEB retail media experience. So we've introduced ourselves earlier. If you missed it the first time, my name's Blake Feiza. I'm a decision scientist at HEB. I co-lead this tug. I have a blog that I post Tableau content on. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. You can probably find me there. And Matt.
Yeah, and I'm Matt. I'm the poor soul that Blake has to suffer through. So yeah, so that's me. I lead the retail media analytics for HEB.
And a quick look at our agenda today. Brief introduction into who HEB is and what retail media is. And then additionally, we'll walk through our design process that we use over at HEB. So to kick that off, who is HEB? For those in the room, there's a good chance that we all know who HEB is. For those online, you might not if you're not from Texas or the general region, but that's exactly who we are. We're a regional grocer based in Texas, operating only in Texas and parts of Mexico. We see a little over $40 billion in sales, so it's definitely a big deal down here. We're the market share leader in the areas we operate in. And additionally, for the last 3 years straight now, dunnhumby has voted us as the #1 retailer. So it's not just in Texas that we're a big deal. dunnhumby thinks we're #1. So it's got to mean something. And yeah, that's a little bit about HEB. Matt, do you want to talk about retail media?
Yeah, so retail media, it's a space within retail that's pretty hot right now. It's a space where retailers and CPG companies are able to connect, and CPG companies will procure advertising through a retailer's ecosystem. And the kind of cool part about this is it's an opportunity for CPG brands to connect directly to advertising and first party audiences within a retailer. HEB stood one up. Like I said earlier, I've been supporting the retail media business for several years at this point. If you want to learn more about HEB retail media, there's a website and all of that stuff. But ultimately, the key point here that we're trying to make, and Suvojit called this out earlier, is that this is there's a lot of disparate data sources here. So really what our goal here is within retail media is to connect first party audiences to sales data and advertising data. That's a very fractured data space. And so as we think about trying to connect that data, it really not only connect that data, but create comparisons off of that data and be able to tell data stories with that becomes very difficult, especially to do that at scale. And that's ultimately what we're going to talk about is how do we think about problems and how do we think about solving those problems at scale. And so specifically what we're going to talk about today is the design approach that we take to communicate out the campaign performance and some of that kind of stuff. So all of what we're going to show here is synthetic data, synthetic dashboards that we had created. But if you go to the next slide, we're going to talk about why design matters. And so my favorite question is on the very next slide. Inevitably, as we're working on Tableau, one of the questions I get is, well, how do I export this to Excel, right? I just want the raw data so I can do whatever I want with it. And this on its own is it's an okay question. But to some degree, depending on the use cases, this question is indicative of a failure in design. Because if we have solid design, we're able to understand the needs that our stakeholders want, and we're able to address those needs up front so that they don't have to go take this to Excel to tweak it and manipulate it however they want. Now, there's times where that's needed, and in those circumstances, then it makes total sense. But that's not every time, right? And so if we go to the next slide, there was a designer by the name of Milton Glaser. He designed this I Heart New York logo, did a whole bunch of other things, has a whole bunch of his work in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. His philosophy here was to design is to communicate clearly by whatever means you can control or master. Now, within Tableau, one of the things that I've found is that the challenge here really becomes how do you put things where you want them to be? How do you tell that specific story that you want to tell within the platform? And and that really, you're given a lot of flexibility. And so the onus is on us as developers to design that solution that will answer the questions that our stakeholders have. And that's exactly what we're going to do. And so Blake is now going to talk about how do we, in a minute, Blake's going to talk about how do we apply that. But ultimately, the whole goal here behind design is think about design as the blueprint, right? As we think about going from an idea or a concept or a need that we may have, how do we create a blueprint to get us to an end state that's desirable for us and for our stakeholders as well? And that design process and that design approach is the linking between those two. So as we think about this, it requires a lot of upfront work. It's a lot of effort to get effective designs in place, but ultimately at the end of the day, what that's going to do is that's going to save you a lot of time on the back end as you're trying to manage those stakeholder requests in perpetuity. And so now Blake will talk about how do we apply that at HEB.
Perfect. So thank you, Matt. And the way that we go about applying some of that design at HEB is through a process called design thinking. So just out of curiosity in the room, has anyone heard of design thinking before? It's a phrase. Anyone want to try and give me a definition for what it is?
No.
Don't blame you. And online, I couldn't see it anyways if you had a thought. But what I would say as a simple definition for design thinking is understanding the wants and needs of the end user. So can we put ourselves in that end user's shoes and understand what it is that they are trying to accomplish through the tool that we are delivering to them? So to kick off how we go about using design thinking here, we like to start with the requirements gathering phase. And over at HEB, this tends to look like something in the form of a stakeholder interview. So we're going to meet with that stakeholder and we're going to run through all of the whys, the whats, the whens. We're going to boil down what it is that they are trying to accomplish with their tool. A lot of times, stakeholders are a little bit scarred from past experiences, and they'll walk into that conversation expecting a data buffet. They'd love everything that you have on the menu, everything that you could possibly imagine it, all the grains ever. Oftentimes, that's not what they really need, and it's a huge pain for the developers to go through and make that happen, especially if it won't be used in the end. So in this process, I think a really important piece of the puzzle is documentation. Documentation helps twofold. Initially, it tells that stakeholder, hey, all of my requests were heard, they were synthesized, and it's kind of a contract saying, hey, the stakeholder likes what it is that we're planning to deliver and understands the goal in mind. And additionally, that second purpose for documentation is actually down the road. Once this final dashboard has been delivered and handed off, it becomes a really great starting point for an FAQ page or any sort of resource for how to use that dashboard that we're handing off. So with that, we've gathered our stakeholders' needs. The next step here is actually going out and getting inspired. So when we at HEB go about building dashboards, oftentimes we don't want to reinvent the wheel every time that we have a new stakeholder request. And there's tons of incredible resources around us. So publicly, there is Tableau Public. So browsing through some of the dashboards out there, you could get some incredible inspiration for chart designs or dashboards that have been built. I know Suvojit showed a great dashboard earlier that I'm going to use for reference in the future. And then additionally, reach out to your peers around you at the company. Have they done something similar? Many times, the question that your stakeholder asked is not the first time that question's ever been asked. So ask around and see if someone else has already solved that problem. So generally speaking, this is the step where we want to understand what's possible and get a feel for what it is that we'd like to create. So now looking at a quick blueprint for how we go about the mock-up process here and going from that idea into something that we can share and get alignment on. We like to start at HEB with a physical mock-up. And the purpose for physical, and I really do mean pen and paper or something that you can hold in your hands, is to reduce friction from technology. So the goal in this phase is really speed. You want to get your idea from your mind out to something that you can share with minimal friction. So by simplifying the process down, it becomes much easier to do something like that and iterate quickly. Once we've got that physical mock-up pulled together, we introduce a higher fidelity digital mock-up. At this point, once we introduce a digital component, it becomes incredibly easy to work cross-functionally with other team members. They may or may not be in different cities or states, that digital mockup is incredibly important unless you want to mail that sheet of paper across the country. And finally, once we've got that final high fidelity digital mockup, we go back to that stakeholder and we get that alignment once more. Note that there's an arrow at the bottom of this flowchart here, and that's because this can be an iterative process. So oftentimes that first digital mockup you make might look great for you and your peers. That stakeholder still isn't happy. That's totally fine. We can revisit the mockup phase and work through this process as many times as we need until we finally hit that alignment point with our stakeholder. Notice that all of this happens before that lovely blue box to the right with Tableau. So we really do want to emphasize that get all this alignment done outside of Tableau so that once you enter the tool, it becomes a much more seamless process. So diving into a couple of those steps a bit closer here, I want to start with physical mockups. So for the synthetic data that Matt and I used for this dashboard, we did truly only spend a couple of minutes working through logo ideas, dashboard designs, and a couple chart examples as well. So again, to emphasize, the goal here is really speed, because oftentimes your first idea is not going to be your best idea. So by emphasizing speed here, we can iterate through as many times as we need to finally get those charts that will make it to that digital mockup. So here we are. We've got a digital mockup up on the slide here. In our case, this is actually a background image that we're going to pass through into Tableau and build a dashboard on top of. And in our scenario, we actually like to use Figma as our tool of choice, but that is definitely not the only tool to do these sort of digital mockups in. The right tool for this sort of mockup is whatever tool you're most comfortable in. So that could be Canva, that could be PowerPoint, or anything else in that design suite generally. The next thing I want to add here is incorporate some of those screenshots from your inspiration earlier on into these high fidelity mockups. So don't spend a ton of time drawing out rectangles to make your bar chart. If you saw a chart that you really liked before, just throw a screenshot on top. And if it communicates what it is you're trying to build, that's sufficient for this phase. And with that, we've now gone to our stakeholders. We've gotten that final alignment that this dashboard answers their needs and requirements. We'll pass it back to Matt to talk about delivering the design.
All right. So as we look at what we've covered about 14-ish slides of how to actually think about building something. Now is when we actually start to talk about building, and we've got one slide on that. So, but that's by design, right? That is the whole point here, right? As we think about this, the effort should really be spent upfront thinking about the problems that we're trying to solve and really solving the problem that needs to be solved. So if you go to the next slide, so this is essentially what we had pulled together as we're thinking about the final and desirable end state of our work with stakeholders and all of that. We'll now have a really good idea of what it is that we're looking to accomplish. And once we know that, then we know how many tables we need to be pulling in to populate this dashboard. We know whether the data needs to be structured tall versus wide. We know whether we need to add data densification. If we want to add a Sankey diagram, probably going to need data densification. If we want to add map layers or do anything fancy like that, data densification. We're also going to know what tools we need to start using, right? Because now we know, hey, do we need to have some kind of advanced data processing? Are we going to need a tool like Databricks or Snowflake or BigQuery to help us execute the data pipelines that will feed this dashboard, right? Or can we leverage something like a Tableau prep to do that work for us? Really, at this point, we've answered a lot of the questions around what the end state needs to look like. Now we start to pick the tools and the data processes that get us to that ideal end state. And so then once we have that data prepped, we can pump it into Tableau. We can upload this background image into our dashboard, and we're good to go. And so the thought here is that the development piece, once we've done the design work, is actually pretty straightforward. You're not spinning your wheels, spending a lot of time trying to figure out, well, I like this view or that view, because you've already done that. You've already done that research. And so just to close this out, wanted to put together a checklist of everything that we had talked about. So one, first and foremost, you need to gather your requirements. You need to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. You need to research those best practices. What else is available, right? This is where you can go get inspired on Tableau Public or on other design websites and whatnot. You create physical mock-ups and digital mock-ups. And Ankur, I see that you talked about pen and paper at best. I really strongly recommend pen and paper. I'm a bit of a whiteboard guy. Pen and paper is also a super solid approach. But I do strongly encourage the physical mock-ups here. And then getting alignment, define and prepare your data model, and then ultimately build your dashboard. And so that's the approach that we leverage. Huge shout out as well to some of the work that Adam Miko has done. So a lot of this was built using. So this is a real dashboard that we created, and it was built using synthetic data. That is also another approach that you can use, right? Blake had mentioned it a little bit earlier. We can run through this design process, and in some degree, in parallel, we can leverage synthetic data or simple data models to start practicing and playing with those data feeds to help us understand what the actual data may look like, and will that work with my overall design. So, but with that, we've got 2 minutes, and open it up to questions or anything along those lines. Yeah.
So I think that's a great process. So I was wondering if you ever ran into an experience where your stakeholders try to be the designers to say, hey, we want red, yellow, green, and we want this. How do you handle that?
Honestly, for something like that, where stakeholders have very specific needs or very specific wants is probably a better way to put it. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with meeting them with what they need. Now, if they're gonna ask for a pie chart with 100 different segments, like I'm going to try to coach them on better ways to view that. But honestly, what I have found is that a lot of our stakeholders don't really know what's available or what's possible. And so by being able to physically show them something that says, hey, this is what we can do, it goes a long ways to helping trim some of those challenges.
Do you have to do any mobile?
So honestly, I would live into the same kind of process, whether it's mobile or desktop. You should be able to apply the same process, right? It's at that point then the sizing is going to be a little bit different, but ultimately that's the key difference, right? Is the size of whatever it is you're looking at.
I guess I should clarify, like, I guess converting, like having an existing dashboard and trying to do mobile. I don't know if you've done this, but it's like very difficult to do the mobile with like the same as the dashboard.
Yeah, it's like in something like that, I would expect them to be different, right? Because you want to have a different experience, you want different interactivity. And so it's like in that case, it would be like of what's in that dashboard, what are the key features that we actually want to perpetuate into that mobile experience? Because there may be some things that you want that are okay to leave out and have them focus on the broader dashboard for those deeper questions, where that mobile view may actually just be, hey, I just need a quick hit and understand what's happening. And so the problems that you're going to be solving are a little bit different. At least that would be my expectation with a mobile dashboard.
We do have a question from Lori. I know Jane's question. So before we get to that, Jane is not a stranger to the Tableau ecosystem. She asked a question about mockups. She's also a student Iron Viz winner of 2024. So we have celebrities in the audience. All right, Lori's question. Where in Tableau are you uploading these designs?
Yeah, I can answer that. So typically the way that we'll handle that at HEB is in whatever tool we built that image in, we will actually export that out as a PNG or a JPEG, any file like that. And on a dashboard, Tableau actually allows you to add an image onto your dashboard. It's the same kind of way that you would add a sheet onto a dashboard, but it's actually the image object. And then from there, we just upload it up from our computer and you're good to go. Ojo, do you know if there were any other questions on the digital side?
My signal's cutting off, unfortunately. My internet's not the best. So I missed a part of your question.
Yeah. So Suvojit had one, and I just responded to it. We haven't. So his question is really around pushback from stakeholders on this type of approach, and realistically,
yeah, I don't know whether you've seen me. I'm a pretty big guy. They don't push back when it comes to me. I just block the door and I convince them to accept what I'm trying to say. But jokes aside, if you lead with best practices, talk about the blueprint and what's the best practice from a performance scalability standpoint, more often than not, reasonable leaders would accept. And if they don't agree, then hide, run away.
That's funny.
Perfect. Then if that is all the questions, I'll share my screen once more for a quick closing. Boom, boom.
Yeah, my screen's frozen over. For some reason, my internet's not the best.
No worries.
Don't forget to take a picture of the audience. We had at the peak almost 32, 35 attendees online, and I'm sure there is a fun bunch there on site as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll grab a picture here in just a moment as we wrap this up. So did want to throw this quick slide up for just anyone who's still with us here. I know we're a few minutes over, but talking about how you can start to think about getting involved as well with the broader data fam. We've got a couple potential options for you. First and foremost, if you haven't joined the community Slack channel for Tableau, I highly recommend you do so. The QR code on the screen here will allow you to join that Slack community. And it's great. You'll see all of your community projects on there. You'll see forums to ask questions about the tool. And it's really just a great way to get connected with the data fam. And then additionally, community projects, I just mentioned them. Some big ones are Makeover Monday and Workout Wednesday. They're great ways to practice your skills and continue to work on a portfolio to promote your skills and grow as a Tableau developer. The third one up there is actually hosted by Ojo, one of our co-leaders, BizViz52. If you're at the retail tug, chances are you'll like the BizViz52. So give that challenge a peek as well. And yeah, the other piece on here is Tableau user groups. If you're listening to this, you've attended at least one, so appreciate you for that. But volunteer as well if you want to take that to the next level. We're always looking for additional speakers at the retail tug, so reach out. And with that, here's that QR code on the left for our upcoming session in September. And additionally, our own retail Slack channel QR code is available on the right. So I'll leave this up for a few minutes, but that does conclude the content that we have for everyone today. So thank you all for joining.
It was fantastic to hear Matt and Blake rerun their TC. It was a massive gathering there. So for those who haven't attended Tableau conference in person, Matt and Blake have raised quite a storm from this presentation. And thank you, Suvojit, for making time and sharing your deep retail knowledge with all of us who needed this. With that, do sign up with the next user group meeting that's happening in September. The Viz TS show is something that you haven't, if you have, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, can't miss it because there's A, swag to be won, B, there's bragging rights. When you do something, it's like work over Wednesday on steroids. Anyhow, with that, it's a wrap. Thank you for your time. We'll look forward